The Galactic Naval Academy's corridors hummed with the electric tension of another ordinary day. Well, ordinary if you ignore the fact that over 300 species mingled together in what was supposedly the most prestigious military institution in the known universe. Zara Chen walked through chrome-plated hallways, her regulation boots making sharp clicks against the polished floor. At 5'6", she wasn't particularly tall by human standards, but in an academy filled with willowy Altarians and stick-thin vegan delegates, she might as well have been a walking tank. Her dark hair was pulled back in the standard military bun, and her brown eyes held that particular gleam that made most aliens think twice before starting trouble. Most aliens. Not all. Well. Look what crawled out of the death world today. Came a nasal voice from behind her. Zara didn't turn around immediately. She'd been expecting this. Hell, she'd been expecting it since day one when she walked into orientation and watched half the auditorium literally recoil at her presence. Humans had a reputation in the galaxy, and it wasn't for their diplomatic skills or their poetry. No, humanity was known for exactly three things: surviving on a planet that actively tried to kill them daily, being absolutely insane in combat situations, and having zero patience for bureaucratic nonsense. She finally turned, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Kex Morvian, still compensating for something with that big mouth of yours. The Zenthri bully stepped forward, his pale blue skin flushing a deeper shade of azure with anger. His species was tall, elegant, and about as fragile as spun glass. Behind him stood his usual collection of lackeys. Two more Zenthris, a pair of Rigelian twins, and two Proximan delegates who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. "You think you're so tough, human," Kex sneered, his three eyes narrowing in what passed for intimidation among his kind. "But you're in our territory now. This isn't your savage little mudball where you can solve everything with violence." Zara's smile widened. "Oh, Kex. Sweet, naive Kex. You really don't understand humans at all, do you?" The other students in the hallway were beginning to notice the confrontation. Some hurried past, not wanting to get involved. Others lingered, sensing drama. A few pulled out their recording devices, because nothing went viral quite like a good old-fashioned academy beatdown. "What I understand," Kex continued, puffing out his chest, "is that you don't belong here. The academy made a mistake accepting a primitive species like yours. You're nothing but animals pretending to be civilized." That got a genuine laugh out of Zara. "Animals? Oh, that's rich coming from someone whose species' idea of conflict resolution is filing formal complaints in triplicate." One of the Rigelian twins stepped forward. They were insectoid creatures with compound eyes and weighed too many limbs for Zara's comfort. "The human shows disrespect to superior beings. This cannot stand." "Superior beings?" Zara repeated, her voice dripping with mock surprise. "I'm sorry. Which way your species has actually won a war in the last 1,000 years? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've all gotten real comfortable hiding behind peace treaties and strongly worded letters." The crowd was growing larger now. Students from dozens of species formed a loose circle around the confrontation, their various forms of communication creating a babble of whispers, clicks, and telepathic static. Kex's face was now a lovely shade of deep purple. "You want to see what superior beings can do, Deathworlder? We challenge you. All 7 of us. Right here, right now." The hallway went dead silent. Even the ventilation system seemed to pause. Zara looked around at the 7 aliens surrounding her. Kex and his 2 Zenthri friends, the twin Rigelians, and the 2 Proximans who were definitely having second thoughts about this whole situation. She could see it in their large, dark eyes. They were prey species, herbivores who'd evolved on peaceful worlds where the biggest threat was maybe a particularly aggressive fruit. 7 against 1, she mused, tapping her chin thoughtfully. "You know what? That actually sounds about right." "What's that supposed to mean?" demanded one of the Zenthri lackeys. "Well," Zara said, rolling her shoulders and hearing the joints pop, "on Earth, we have this saying. It takes about 7 academy bullies to equal 1 mildly annoyed human. I was worried this might be too easy." The insult hit its mark. All 7 aliens bristled with outrage, their various forms of indignation creating quite the spectacle. The Zenthra's skin shifted to an impressive spectrum of angry colors. The Rigelian's wings buzzed with agitation, and the Proximans just looked like they wanted to disappear into the floor. "That's it," Keck snarled. "We're going to teach you some respect. Human." "Oh, you're going to teach me?" Zara's eyebrows shot up. "This should be interesting. What's the lesson plan? Advanced whimpering? Intermediate complaining to authority figures? Or are we jumping straight to graduate-level running away?" The crowd was loving this. She could hear the various alien equivalent of snickering and see recording devices tracking every word. This was going to be all over the Academy networks within the hour. "Attack her!" Kex shouted, apparently deciding that words weren't getting him anywhere. And here's where things got interesting. The 7 bullies moved in what they probably thought was a coordinated assault. The Zenthras came at her from the front, their long limbs reaching out to grab her. The Rigelians tried to flank her from the sides, their insectoid speed giving them confidence. The Proximans hung back, probably hoping the others would do all the work. Zara didn't move for exactly 1.3 seconds. She just stood there, hands at her sides, watching them approach with the kind of calm interest you might show while observing an interesting bug. Then she moved. The first Zenthri lackey reached her a split second before the others. Zara stepped slightly to her left, grabbed his extended arm, and used his own momentum to send him flying into the nearest wall. The impact made a sound like someone dropping a bag of wet cement. He hit the chrome surface with enough force to leave a distinctly alien-shaped dent before sliding to the floor in a groaning heap. The Rigelian twin on her right swung one of his 4 arms in what was probably supposed to be a devastating blow. Zara caught the limb, twisted, and heard the satisfying snap of chitin breaking. The alien shriek of pain was cut short when her left elbow found his solar plexus. He folded like a house of cards in a hurricane. Kex himself was coming in high, tried to use his height advantage to tackle her from above. This was a mistake for several reasons, not least of which was that humans were built for wrestling with things that weighed several times more than they did and had more teeth than a hardware store. Zara simply grabbed him by his fancy academy uniform, used his downward momentum against him, and sent him flying over her shoulder in a textbook judo throw. He landed hard enough to crack the floor tiles and immediately began making the kind of noises that suggested several important parts of his anatomy were no longer in their factory-assigned positions. The second Zenthri lackey had enough time to look terrified before Zara's boot connected with his midsection. The kick lifted him clear off his feet and sent him sailing backward into a support column. The metallic ring of impact echoed through the hallway like a dinner bell. The second Rigelian twin had the good sense to try backing away, but Zara was already moving. She feinted left, causing him to dodge right, directly into her waiting fist. The punch caught him square in what passed for a face among his species. There was a wet crunch, and suddenly the floor was decorated with an interesting pattern of alien blood. The 2 Proximans had been trying to coordinate some kind of pincer movement, but they were herbivores from a low-gravity world trying to fight a predator from a planet where everything, including the weather, actively tried to murder you on a daily basis. It was like watching house cats try to take down a honey badger. Zara grabbed the first Proximan by his ceremonial neck frills and introduced his head to her knee. The impact made a sound like a melon hitting concrete. He joined his friends on the floor, adding to what was rapidly becoming quite the collection of unconscious bullies. The last Proximan, showing more wisdom than his companions, tried to run. This was also a mistake. Zara's hand shot out, grabbed him by the back of his robes, and yanked him off his feet. She spun once, building momentum, and released him at precisely the right moment to send him crashing into the growing pile of his defeated allies. The entire fight had taken exactly 9 seconds. Zara dusted off her hands and looked around at the 7 groaning, bleeding, unconscious forms scattered across the hallway floor. The crowd of spectators was dead silent, their various sensory organs wide with shock and more than a little fear. "Huh," she said, her voice carrying clearly in the sudden quiet. "I guess the lesson today was basic human combat doctrine. For those of you taking notes, the key points are: don't start fights you can't finish, and never, ever underestimate a species that evolved on a world trying to kill them. She looked directly at the recording devices. Oh, and for the Academy administration who will inevitably review this footage, they started it. I finished it. Standard Deathworlder self-defense protocols were observed throughout. The medical alerts were already sounding. Emergency response teams would be here within minutes to scrape what was left of the 7 bullies off the floor and rush them to the medical bay. With any luck, they'd all survive. Probably. Humans weren't actually trying to kill when they fought like this, just establish dominance and end threats quickly. Still, the Academy's medical staff was about to get a crash course in treating injuries that their textbooks probably didn't cover. Turns out, when you live on a world where everything from the plants to the weather to the small furry animals can kill you, you develop a very efficient approach to violence. As the first medical drones arrived and began scanning the casualties, Zara started walking toward her next class. She had advanced xenobiology in 10 minutes, and Professor Trill got cranky when students were late. Behind her, she could hear the whispered conversation starting up again, the rustle of recording devices being hidden, and the mechanical whine of medical equipment working overtime. Just another day at the Galactic Naval Academy. The disciplinary hearing was scheduled for 3 days later, giving the Academy administration just enough time to panic, review the footage about 47 times, and realize they had a public relations nightmare on their hands. Zara sat in the waiting area outside the hearing room, watching the parade of officials, legal advisors, and nervous administrators scurrying back and forth. Her dress uniform was immaculate, her posture relaxed, and her expression suggested she was finding the whole situation mildly amusing. Across from her sat Commander Vex Kalothan, the Academy's disciplinary officer and a member of the notoriously bureaucratic Altarian species. His pale green skin had taken on a distinctly sickly hue ever since he'd been assigned to handle what the Academy was internally calling the human incident. Cadet Chen, he began, his voice carrying the kind of forced calm that suggested he'd been practicing this conversation for hours. Do you understand the severity of the situation? Zara looked up from the data pad she'd been reading. You mean the part where 7 bullies decided to gang up on a single student and got exactly what they deserved? Yeah, I understand it perfectly. Commander Kalothan's left eye twitched. 7 students are in the medical bay, cadet. 2 require surgery. 3 are in intensive care, and all 7 will be dealing with the psychological trauma of this incident for years to come. Psychological trauma? Zara repeated, her eyebrows climbing toward her hairline. Commander, with all due respect, they attacked me. 7 against 1. If they're traumatized by losing a fight they started, maybe they should have thought about that before they started it. You hospitalized them in 9 seconds. I showed restraint, Zara countered. If I'd wanted to hospitalize them, they'd still be unconscious. As it stands, they're all expected to make full recoveries within 2 to 6 weeks. That's practically gentle by human standards. The commander's other eye started twitching. Gentle? Gentle? Cadet Chun, you put Kex Morvian through a wall. The repairs to the corridor are going to cost the Academy 3,000 credits. Zara shrugged. Send the bill to Kex. He started it. Before Commander Kalothan could respond, the hearing room door slid open with a soft hiss. Admiral Nexra Wyneth, the Academy's commanding officer, stepped out. She was a vegan, tall and willowy with the kind of serene expression that suggested either deep wisdom or complete resignation to the insanity of her job. Cadet Chun, she said, her voice carrying the musical quality typical of her species. Please come in. The hearing room was impressive in that sterile, intimidating way that military institutions loved. A long table dominated the center of the room, behind which sat a panel of 5 officers representing different species and military branches. Admiral Wyneth took her place at the center, flanked by 2 Academy department heads, a representative from Galactic Command, and what Zara assumed was some kind of legal advisor. Please be seated, Cadet, Admiral Wyneth said, gesturing to a single chair facing the panel. Zara sat down, keeping her back straight and her hands folded in her lap. She'd been through military discipline before, though admittedly never at this level. We've reviewed the incident footage extensively, the Admiral continued. We've also interviewed witnesses and examined the medical reports on the injured students. Students who attacked me, Zara interjected calmly. Yes, the Admiral agreed. That fact is not in dispute. What concerns us, Cadet Chen, is the level of force you employed in response to that attack. The Galactic Command representative leaned forward. He was a proximan, which Zara found ironically appropriate given that two of his species had been on the receiving end of her excessive force. The medical reports make for disturbing reading, he said, his large dark eyes focused intently on her. Multiple fractures, internal bleeding, concussions, and what our trauma specialists describe as injuries consistent with high-velocity impact damage. These are the kinds of wounds we see in shuttle crash survivors. Zara nodded thoughtfully. That sounds about right. Human combat techniques tend to be efficient. Efficient? The proximan's voice climbed an octave. You call hospitalizing 7 students efficient. I call ending a threatening situation quickly and decisively efficient, Zara replied. If I'd drawn the fight out, someone might have been seriously hurt. The panel exchanged glances. The kind of glances that suggested they were all wondering if the human sitting in front of them was completely insane or if this was just how Deathworlders thought. Admiral Wyneth cleared her throat. Cadet Chun, help us understand your perspective. When faced with 7 attackers, what options did you consider? Zara tilted her head, as if the question was genuinely puzzling. Options? Admiral, they attacked me. 7 against 1. In human culture, that's what we call a target-rich environment. I had 2 choices. Fight or let them beat me up. I chose to fight. But surely, pressed a legal advisor, a nervous-looking Altarian with rapidly cycling skin colors, you could have used less force? Called for help? Attempted to de-escalate. De-escalate? Zara's laugh was sharp and humorless. They'd been building up to this for weeks. Kex and his little gang had been pushing boundaries, testing limits, seeing how far they could go before I pushed back. This wasn't misunderstanding or a heated argument that got out of hand. This was a planned attack. She leaned forward slightly. You want to know what de-escalation looks like to a human? It's the 3 weeks I spent ignoring their insults, their little accidents in the corridors, and their attempts to isolate me socially. It's every time I walked away instead of engaging. But when 7 beings decide to physically attack you, de-escalation is no longer an option. The footage shows them approaching you aggressively, Admiral Wyneth admitted. But it also shows you remaining stationary until they were within striking distance. Some might argue that you could have retreated. Retreated to where? Zara asked. Admiral, I'm a human at an academy filled with species that already view my people as dangerous primitives. If I had run from this fight, it wouldn't have ended the bullying. It would have marked me as prey and made the situation worse for every human who comes after me. The room fell silent. It was a kind of silence that suggested uncomfortable truths were being processed. Finally, the department head for combat studies spoke up. She was a grizzled Centaurian veteran with scars that suggested she'd seen real action. Cadet Chun, in your assessment, were you in genuine danger during this incident? Zara considered the question seriously. Physically? Probably not. 7 Academy bullies aren't really equipped to seriously injure a human, even working together. But danger isn't just about physical harm. They were attempting to establish dominance through violence, to put me in my place through intimidation and humiliation. In human terms, that's an unacceptable challenge to personal sovereignty. Personal sovereignty, the Galactic Command representative repeated slowly. The right to exist without being threatened, intimidated, or attacked, Zara explained. It's a fundamental human concept. When someone tries to take that away from you, you respond with exactly as much force as necessary to restore it and ensure the threat doesn't repeat. And in your judgment, Admiral Wyneth said carefully, 9 seconds of combat was necessary. 9 seconds was how long it took, Zara corrected. If it had taken longer, it would have taken longer. If it could have been shorter, it would have been shorter. Humans don't fight to prove points or show off. We fight to end threats. The Combat Studies Department head was nodding slowly. Your technique was remarkably efficient. No wasted motion, no unnecessary brutality. You neutralized each threat in the most direct way possible. That's how we're taught to fight on Earth, Zara said. Every predator is stronger than you, Every disaster is bigger than you, and every threat is trying to kill you. You don't have time for fancy moves or extended battles. You end the fight as quickly as possible and move on. But surely, the legal advisor tried again, you understand that this kind of response is disproportionate to the threat level posed by Academy students? Zara's expression hardened slightly. With respect, sir, proportionate response is a luxury you can afford when you're not the one being attacked. When 7 beings decide to gang up on you, you don't have the time or the safety margin to calculate the exact minimum force required. You use what you know works, and you use it decisively. She paused, then continued. Besides, what exactly would you consider proportionate? Should I have let them land a few hits first to make it fair? Should I have fought them one at a time? Should I have pulled my punches and risked the fight dragging on long enough for someone to get seriously hurt? Admiral Wyneth raised a hand to forestall any response from the increasingly agitated legal advisor. Cadet Chun, what do you think should happen now? Honestly, I think Kex Morvian and his friends should be expelled for organizing a group attack on a fellow cadet. I think the Academy should review its anti-bullying policies, since they clearly aren't working. And I think everyone should move on with their lives. And what about your actions? Zara shrugged. I defended myself using standard human self-defense protocols. If that's against Academy regulations, then maybe the Academy needs to reconsider how it handles species with different cultural approaches to conflict resolution. The panel exchanged another series of looks. Admiral Wyneth picked up a data pad and scrolled through it slowly. The Academy's official position, she said finally, is that while your response was culturally understandable, it exceeded the bounds of what we consider appropriate for student conflicts. Zara waited. However, the Admiral continued, the investigation has made it clear that you were the victim of a premeditated group attack. The instigators have been expelled, and we are implementing new policies to prevent similar incidents. And my status? You will receive a formal reprimand for excessive use of force, which will remain in your permanent record. You will also be required to attend cultural sensitivity seminars to better understand how other species view conflict resolution. Zara nodded slowly. And if someone else decides to jump me? Admiral Wyneth's lips quirked in what might have been the ghost of a smile. I suspect, Cadet Chen, that after this incident, you'll find the Academy a remarkably peaceful place. As Zara left the hearing room 20 minutes later, she passed a group of first-year cadets in the hallway. They were from various species, chattering excitedly about something on their data pads. When they saw her, the conversation stopped abruptly. You're her, aren't you? Asked a young Rigelian, his compound eyes wide with something between fear and awe. The human who fought 7 bullies. I'm a human who defended herself, Zara corrected gently. The footage has gone viral across 17 systems, added a Centaurian cadet. Every Academy student in the galaxy has seen it by now. Great, Zara muttered under her breath. Is it true that humans learn to fight before they can walk properly? Asked a third cadet, this one from a species Zara didn't recognize. No, she said, then paused. Well, not officially. But we do live on a world that's trying to kill us constantly, so we tend to pick up survival skills pretty early. As she walked away, she could hear them whispering behind her. Soon, the whispers would spread, the story would grow in the telling, and every bully in the Academy would think twice before targeting the lone human in their midst, which, she reflected, had been the point all along. The Galactic Naval Academy's corridors hummed with their usual electric tension, but now they hummed a little more quietly around Cadet Zara Chen. And in the medical bay, 7 former bullies